If you're searching for what truly defines confidence, don't look for volume, flash, or the urge to be noticed. Real confidence doesn't announce itself. It settles in quietly, moves with intention, and radiates from someone who no longer needs to prove anything. Let me tell you a story. My older brother isn't the loudest person in the room. In fact, most of the time he's barely noticed until he speaks. He doesn't rush to interrupt, doesn't raise his voice to compete, and never feels the need to explain himself just to feel seen. I once asked him why he stayed silent in meetings, even when people misunderstood or dismissed his ideas. He looked at me and said, "Because I don't need to convince anyone. I need to stay clear with myself." That answer stuck with me. You might wonder, is that confidence? No, it's deeper than that. It's the kind of quiet certainty that doesn't waver under pressure, that doesn't seek permission to exist. And that, right there, is the most powerful trait of the truly confident. In this video, you'll be guided into that mindset, not with hype, but with clarity. If the message speaks to you, come back to it. Replay it in the mornings, reflect on it in silence, and let it shape the way you move through the world. And if you know someone who needs to hear it, share it. Leave a comment. Subscribe. Not for numbers, but because repetition builds strength, and strength shared becomes change. 1. You don't rush to prove anything. There was a time I used to speak too much in meetings, not because I had something valuable to say, but because I was afraid that if I didn't speak, I would disappear. I thought confidence meant being seen. I thought it meant showing how much I knew, how fast I could respond, how willing I was to be the loudest voice in the room. But the man who always said the least got the promotion. He didn't rush to jump into every conversation. He didn't fight for attention. Yet when he did speak, the entire room quieted down. They listened, not because he was dramatic or clever, but because he was steady. He was composed. He didn't need validation. He had something far more powerful: quiet confidence. The truth is, when you're desperate to prove something, people can feel it. You may think you're projecting strength, but what they see is insecurity in disguise. And the more you perform, the more they question what you're trying to hide. Truly confident people don't beg to be understood. They don't compete for praise or attention. They understand that presence isn't something you chase, it's something you build. And that presence comes from restraint, from calm, from emotional discipline. The moment you let go of the need to explain yourself to everyone, you start becoming someone others naturally respect. You stop trying to dominate the room, and you start controlling your energy. That's when you begin to earn an unshakable presence. There's something magnetic about someone who can sit through discomfort without reacting. Someone who doesn't flinch when misunderstood, doesn't jump at the opportunity to justify themselves. It makes people curious. It makes them lean in. You see, when you're always trying to be liked, you become predictable. But when you stay composed and deliberate, you become interesting. That stillness, that nonchalant mindset, becomes your quiet strength. You don't just act like you have control, you become the embodiment of self-control. You don't give away your emotional currency to every passing opinion, every sideways glance, every provocation. Instead, you choose where your energy goes, and that choice gives you power. In a world addicted to instant validation, patience is a radical act. Holding your ground without trying to impress anyone is a form of silent power. And the ones who carry it aren't cold, they're focused. They're not emotionless, but they've trained themselves to respond, not react. That difference is everything. It's what separates noise from clarity, chaos from calm, pressure from poise. And while others are exhausting themselves trying to be seen, the confident person conserves energy for what actually matters. They're not in a rush, because they know that time reveals everything. Who's real, who's pretending, who's grounded, and who's just loud. Think of the last time someone really earned your respect. Was it because they tried hard to get your approval? Or was it because they carried themselves in a way that made you listen without needing to be convinced? That kind of self-mastery can't be faked. It's felt. And the only way to develop it is to stop rushing to prove who you are and start building who you are in silence. You don't need to argue to have value. You don't need to be seen to be solid. You just need to show up, not with performance, but with consistency. Not with noise, but with presence. Confidence is not loud. It's not reactive. It doesn't crave the spotlight. It knows where it stands and moves with quiet certainty. When you finally understand that, you stop explaining and start executing. You stop chasing approval and start earning respect. And in doing so, you don't just appear confident, you become unshakable. Let the world speak. Let others perform. You stay grounded. You move when it matters. You speak when it's worth more than silence. That's the power of not needing to prove anything. That's the most powerful trait of the truly confident. 2. You stay quiet and command the room. Imagine walking into a room filled with noise, people talking over one another, egos clashing, voices competing for space. Then in the corner, you notice one person sitting still. Not withdrawn, not nervous, just quiet, watching, listening, completely composed. And somehow that person holds your attention more than anyone else in the room. That's what true presence looks like. It doesn't need volume. It doesn't demand approval. It doesn't chase attention. It owns the space without trying. In a world obsessed with visibility, silence becomes power. And not the silence of fear or hesitation, but the kind born from control, of self, of energy, of emotion. When you stay quiet, not out of insecurity but out of discipline, people notice. They don't know exactly what you're thinking, and that uncertainty creates tension. That tension creates gravity, and that gravity commands respect. Because when someone doesn't rush to speak, when they don't fill every pause with noise, their words gain weight before they're even spoken. We live in a time where everyone feels the pressure to be loud, to constantly share, to prove their worth through commentary. But confidence doesn't look like overexposure. It looks like restraint. The one who speaks least, yet listens most, begins to understand the room better than anyone else. While others are busy reacting, he's reading the energy, calculating the moment, protecting his mental clarity. And when he does speak, he doesn't just add noise, he shifts the direction of the entire conversation. There's a kind of quiet confidence that unnerves people, not because it's threatening, but because it's hard to define. You can't read it, can't predict it, can't dominate it. It's the composed personality that doesn't try to take over, and yet somehow leads without effort. This kind of man doesn't bluff. He doesn't overcompensate. He has trained himself not to need the spotlight because he understands that inner control is louder than any shout. You've probably seen it in the workplace, in social settings, even in family gatherings. The ones who talk too much often lose the room. They burn their credibility trying to be heard. But the one who waits, who stays mentally strong, who holds back until the moment is right, he changes the tone of the space the moment he opens his mouth. Not because of charisma, but because of contrast. The contrast between noise and stillness, between reaction and poise, between desperation and detachment. And let's be clear, this isn't about pretending to be mysterious. It's not about playing games or staying silent to seem smart. It's about mastering your energy so thoroughly that you don't waste it on what doesn't serve your purpose. You don't speak to validate yourself. You speak when the silence becomes more costly than your words. Until then, you observe. You anchor yourself in quiet discipline. You use silence not to hide, but to dominate the space with calm presence. The world is filled with people trying to be loud enough to matter, but what they don't realize is that the rarest energy in the room, and therefore the most respected, is the one that doesn't need to be loud. When you stop trying to prove your confidence and start embodying it, your presence speaks louder than anything you could say. And slowly, the room shifts. People adjust their posture around you. They start watching you. They begin waiting for your voice, not out of obligation, but because your silence has taught them to listen. That's how power is transferred, not by noise, not by force, but by the stillness that stands while everything else shakes. When you stay quiet and grounded, you don't just command attention, you shift the emotional tone. You reset the balance. And in doing so, you become unforgettable. Not because you tried, but because you didn't have to. 3. You don't react, you respond. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Your first instinct is to slam the horn, maybe yell, maybe even tail them for a few seconds just to make your presence known. But when you finally calm down, you realize nothing really changed, except you gave away your peace, your energy, and your control to a stranger you'll never see again. Now, Picture the same moment, but instead you take a breath. You feel the anger rising, but you don't follow it. You don't let the car or the emotion steer you. You let it pass. You stay calm. And just like that, you've chosen response over reaction, control over chaos. That isn't weakness. That's quite a power. Reactions are natural. They're fast, automatic, and often emotional. But confidence is not found in speed. It's found in stillness. The truly confident don't let the moment hijack their mind. They don't let pressure press them into impulsive action. They pause, they evaluate, and then they respond with intention. This gap between trigger and reaction is the space where emotional discipline lives, and it's where confidence becomes visible. Because the person who controls that gap controls their outcome. In today's world, reacting has become the norm. People wear their emotions on their sleeves. Every offense demands a reply. Every disagreement becomes an argument. But what if you stopped giving people that kind of access to your mind? What if you didn't let their behavior decide your behavior? That's where real confidence begins. When you stay grounded, even when the world tries to pull you off balance. When you respond from clarity, not from impulse. We've been conditioned to think quick reaction is a strength, that being first to respond means being the most capable. But confidence isn't measured by speed. It's measured by restraint. The man who pauses before he speaks, who filters emotion through reason, doesn't lose power, he earns respect. While others chase after every confrontation, every insult, every disturbance, he protects his peace like it's sacred. Because it is. And because he knows not every battle is worth his energy. Imagine being in a heated conversation. Someone throws words meant to trigger you. They challenge your pride, twist your intentions, and question your worth. Most people snap. They raise their voice, they defend, they try to win. But the confident man does not enter that arena. He doesn't flinch, he listens, he stands still, lets the noise fall flat. And then, if the moment requires, he responds. Not to be right, but to be clear. Not to win the argument, but to remain in control of himself. This kind of control isn't natural, it's trained. It's built in silence, away from attention, in the small moments when no one else is watching. It starts when you catch yourself reacting and stop. When you feel the fire and choose not to throw it. That's the foundation of inner strength. And that's how you start to build an unshakable presence. You don't need to explain yourself in every moment. You don't need to prove your value in every conflict. You just need to remember who you are and let that memory guide your actions, not your emotions. The person who can respond calmly when chaos surrounds them becomes the anchor. Others begin to look to them, not because they're loud, but because they're steady. Their silence becomes a strategy, their pause becomes presence, and their calm becomes leadership. Because people don't remember who reacted fastest, they remember who remained unmoved when everything else was shaking. That's not just self-control. That's authority without force, dominance without noise. That's what it means to respond, not to react, and to live from power, not impulse. 4. You control where your energy goes. How much of your energy today went into things that actually matter? Not the endless scrolling, not the passive frustration over what someone said, not the quiet resentment that followed you around after a meaningless argument, but real effort, focused, intentional, and aligned with the kind of life you say you want. Whether we realize it or not, every day we're making a choice. We either invest our energy with discipline, or we leak it out through distraction and reaction. And that's where true confidence begins, not in controlling others, but in mastering where your energy flows. Most people walk through their day reacting to everything. They respond to every notification, every comment, every pull on their attention like it's urgent. But what they don't realize is that their energy, their mental clarity, their emotional state is being drained in small, invisible cuts. It's not the big events that exhaust us. It's the constant, unconscious willingness to give energy to the wrong things. The truly confident person is not the loudest, not the most visible, but the one who has learned how to protect their peace. And protection begins with precision, deciding what deserves your time, and more importantly, what doesn't. Confidence is not chaos. It's quite disciplined. It's knowing how to say no, without guilt, without explanation. It's understanding that just because something demands your attention doesn't mean it's worthy of it. And the one who becomes emotionally unshakable is the one who stops chasing every impulse. He learns to stay calm under pressure, not because pressure disappears, but because he no longer feeds it. He no longer lets the outside world dictate his internal weather. When you stop reacting to everything, something strange happens. You regain control. You start to see clearly. You realize not every opinion needs a response, not every conflict needs your energy, and not every invitation is aligned with your direction. This isn't about being indifferent. It's about emotional discipline. It's about building quiet strength by directing your energy toward what moves you forward. When you're constantly explaining, defending, or pleasing, you lose power. But when you act from clarity, when you choose your battles and guard your peace like it's gold, you begin to stand out, not by noise, but by presence. Think about the people you respect most. Are they the ones always talking, always online, always available for drama? Or are they the ones who feel grounded, focused, and intentional? There's a reason their presence feels different. It's because they don't spread themselves thin. They build strong boundaries, not out of fear, but out of purpose. Their inner control is what creates outer composure. And that's what confidence looks like, not in words, but in where you place your energy, day after day, moment after moment. You want to be powerful? Start by becoming selective. Choose where your mind goes. Choose who gets your time. Choose what thoughts you entertain, because every choice shapes your identity. And the person who no longer reacts to everything gains a kind of calm that's impossible to fake. That calm builds self-trust. That self-trust becomes your anchor in chaos, and that anchor makes you unshakable. When you control where your energy goes, you stop living on defense. You move with intention. You speak with clarity. You lead without needing to dominate. And slowly, your presence changes. You no longer feel the need to be everywhere, know everything, or be liked by everyone. You become strategic, you become whole. And that kind of emotional control, the kind that comes not from force but from focus, is what separates those who merely appear confident from those who are truly built from within. 5. You don't need to be liked, you earn respect. Why didn't you smile back? She asked. Because I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to do the right thing, he answered. That single response carried more weight than any apology ever could. In a world where so many adjust themselves just to avoid discomfort, there's something unshakably powerful about a person who stands their ground. Someone who doesn't twist their tone or dilute their presence just to keep others comfortable. True confidence isn't about being liked. It's about living aligned with your values and doing it without asking for permission. The problem today is that too many people trade authenticity for approval. They believe if they're agreeable enough, if they nod enough, if they smile on cue, they'll avoid conflict and maybe even earn respect. But that's not how it works. Pleasing people wins you temporary smiles, not lasting trust. Because deep down, people don't respect those who fold easily. They may like them, yes, but they don't follow them, and they definitely don't turn to them when things fall apart. Respect isn't given for being likable. It's earned through consistency, through clarity, through the willingness to stand alone when necessary. There's a cost to being honest. You might lose applause. You might be misjudged. Some will say you're cold. Others will call you arrogant. But that tension is exactly where confidence is tested. When you no longer rely on being understood to feel grounded, you become untouchable. You start to lead yourself instead of waiting for collective approval to move. And in that posture, firm, calm, inwardly directed, you begin to develop real gravity. The kind that draws others in, not through charm, but through clarity. The truly confident don't need to explain their decisions at every turn. They're not rude, they're not distant, they're just focused. Their energy doesn't scatter trying to smooth every edge or please every person in the room. They choose alignment over admiration. That means saying no, even when it would be easier to say yes. It means telling the truth when silence would be more comfortable. It means being disliked and being okay with it. Because they understand that integrity will outlive popularity every time. You might not realize it at first, but people pay attention to how you carry yourself when no one's watching. And they remember how you respond when you're under pressure, when someone disrespects you, when a crowd expects you to fold. In those moments, your calm defiance becomes a kind of quiet leadership. Not because you tried to impress anyone, but because you stayed composed when others would have collapsed. That's where deep respect is born, in the space between pressure and poise. You don't need to fight for your place when your presence speaks for itself. You don't need to over-explain when your actions speak louder than words. Confidence is quiet for a reason. It isn't seeking approval. It's rooted in self-trust. It knows that some people will misunderstand, and it accepts that, because what matters more is whether you stayed true, not whether you stayed liked. Respect is earned not by being agreeable, but by being grounded. The person who leads with emotional discipline, who chooses to stand tall rather than shrink to fit, ends up creating space for others to do the same. You are inspired not by people-pleasing, but by being unwavering in your values. And over time, the ones who truly matter, the ones who live with depth, clarity, and purpose. They see that, and they remember it. So no, you don't need to be liked. Not if it costs you your center. Not if it means betraying your own voice. You need to be real, steady, and strong enough to withstand disapproval. Because in the end, respect lingers long after the applause has faded. And the man who lives by principle, even quietly, always outlasts the one who lives for praise. 6. You move rarely, but always at the right time. The lion doesn't chase every rabbit. It doesn't roar to remind the jungle who it is. It waits, silent and still, not because it is afraid, but because it knows that movement without purpose is weakness disguised as urgency. And when it finally rises, it doesn't waste energy. It doesn't miss. That's the nature of true confidence, not in constant motion, not in trying to be everywhere, but in choosing your moment with precision. In life, the man who moves too often loses direction, but the one who moves only when it matters builds quiet dominance. Confidence isn't found in being constantly active, constantly seen, or constantly explaining yourself. It's found in restraint, the kind that allows you to sit still while others rush, the kind that holds energy in reserve until it's needed. When you no longer feel pressured to prove yourself every day, you begin to understand the strength in timing. The powerful aren't loud. They aren't always first. They wait until their move matters, until their voice cuts through the noise, until their action has impact. That patience is not passivity. It's a strategy, and it's rare. We live in a world obsessed with movement, always doing, always chasing, always reacting. But reaction is not mastery. It's repetition. The confident man doesn't run after every opportunity or respond to every challenge. He's not distracted by the noise of urgency. He chooses what matters most and conserves his energy for it. That mental discipline separates him from the rest. Because while others burn out chasing applause, he sharpens himself in silence. He's not wasting energy announcing who he is. He's building something deeper. Inner control, focused execution, unshakable presence. This kind of presence doesn't beg to be seen. It makes people notice by contrast. When everyone is moving, the one who waits becomes visible. When everyone is rushing to speak, the one who listens holds power. When the time comes and he does move, whether it's a word, a decision, a step, it carries weight. Not because it's loud, but because it's earned. Because it wasn't thrown out of impulse, but delivered with clarity. And people remember that. They trust it more. Because precision always feels stronger than panic. If you want to be taken seriously, stop trying to act all the time. Stop trying to prove your value in every room. Let your stillness build anticipation. Let your patience confuse the impatient. Let your quiet strength speak louder than forced performance. Confidence isn't about constant display. It's about deliberate action. It's about making fewer moves, but with more meaning. That's how respect is built, not in volume, but in depth. Think of the leaders you admire. They don't speak constantly. They speak when it matters. They don't chase attention. They appear when the moment calls for them. That's the discipline of power. Staying grounded in the middle of chaos, acting only when your move can shift the room, not just be seen in it. Confidence grows in that space between thought and action, in the ability to hold tension without leaking energy, in the rare decision to wait until the moment serves you, not the other way around. Because in the end, what makes someone truly dangerous is not how fast they move, but how precise they are when they do. The ones who hesitate to act from insecurity usually move too soon. But the ones who wait with certainty, who trust their stillness, are the ones others follow. Not because they shouted, but because when they stepped forward, they didn't miss. And that is the quiet precision that defines the truly confident. 7. You stay grounded no matter what. 1 week, they praise you. Next, they question everything you do. One day your name is in the spotlight, the next it's on someone's list of disappointments. And if you let that determine your worth, you'll spend your entire life riding waves you can't control. But confidence isn't built in applause, and it doesn't collapse in criticism. Real confidence lives in the man who stays grounded. Not cold, not numb, just steady. Because while the world spins with noise, opinion, and emotion, the truly confident remain rooted in something deeper. Self-trust. You don't have to be untouched by emotion to be grounded. You don't have to fake indifference or wear some mask of toughness. You just have to know who you are, with enough clarity that the highs don't intoxicate you and the lows don't define you. In a culture obsessed with reaction, that kind of stillness feels almost unnatural, but it's not indifference. It's maturity. It's the discipline of emotional sovereignty, where your identity is no longer tied to the approval or disapproval of others. Staying grounded doesn't mean life won't shake you. It means you won't fall apart when it does. Because storms will come, unexpected changes, public mistakes, unfair judgment. People will misunderstand you, forget you, admire you, and then turn on you. And if you tie your value to any of that, your confidence will always be for rent. But the man who builds his foundation internally, who centers himself not in praise but in purpose, is the one who endures quietly, calmly, and with unshakable presence. There's a strength in not having to constantly adjust to how others see you. The grounded man doesn't inflate when he's admired, and he doesn't shrink when he's criticized. He walks the same, speaks the same, holds his posture the same. Not because he's robotic, but because he's rooted. He knows what matters and doesn't let noise drown out what's real. While others spend their energy managing perception, he spends his cultivating depth. And in that depth, there's a peace that outlasts popularity. You can't fake this kind of composure. It's trained through lived experience, through staying calm when your work is overlooked, through staying kind when someone misreads your silence as arrogance, through standing your ground when easier roads invite you to sell yourself short. It's not about being above emotion. It's about holding your center when emotion wants to take the wheel. Because the man who can feel everything, yet stay stable, is the one others rely on when life gets chaotic. There's something magnetic about a person who doesn't need the room to be perfect to remain composed. When you see someone who walks through setbacks without losing their tone, without broadcasting their frustration, you remember them. They don't beg for understanding. They don't try to justify every stumble. They just keep going, with clarity, with restraint, with quiet focus. That's the kind of presence that earns long-term respect, not because it's dramatic, but because it's rare. You don't control how people treat you. You don't control the timing of rewards or recognition, but you do control how you show up. And when you do that with consistency, especially when no one's watching or cheering, your confidence deepens. You become the one who can be trusted, not because you say all the right things, but because you're stable in a world that changes every hour. The tree that bends but doesn't break, the anchor that holds beneath the surface, that's who you become. In the end, the most powerful kind of confidence is not reactive. It doesn't rise and fall with circumstance. It stands quietly in the center of uncertainty and says, I know who I am. And in that grounded place, nothing and no one can take your power away. True confidence isn't loud. It doesn't chase attention or bend to approval. It's built in silence, tested in discomfort, and proven in restraint. Whether it's staying calm under pressure, speaking less but with more weight, or protecting your energy from what doesn't deserve it, quiet confidence always leaves a stronger impression than performance ever could. You don't need to react to everything. You don't need to be liked by everyone. What you need is control over your emotions, your focus, and your presence. If this message spoke to you, don't just hear it once. Come back to it. Replay it when the world feels too loud or when you feel the pull to prove something. Let this become a habit. Because building an unshakable presence requires repetition. Now it's your turn. Share your story in the comments. Moments when you chose calm over chaos, silence over reaction, or self-respect over approval. Someone reading may need that encouragement more than you think. And if you found value here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. That's how we keep building this space. A place for those who choose discipline over noise and inner strength over empty performance.